I'm Sherry Sturman, the Director of Crayola Education, and I'm excited that Harper Kids and Crayola are collaborating on the Read Along, Draw Along series that helps children enjoy great books and the illustrations that bring them to life. So get cozy, grab some drawing supplies, and get ready for an interactive story session. I'm thrilled to introduce today's author, Kelly DiPuccio, and illustrator, Riza Figueroa. Let's learn a bit about each of you. Kelly, you're a child development expert. Tell us how you bring your knowledge of children to your books and what messages you focus on when you write stories for children.
Well, I don't know if I would necessarily call myself an expert, but I do have a bachelor's degree in child psychology, and it was many years later that I came to write books for kids. But when I start any new book, I really don't start with like, what is my message? What is the story going to be? What's the message of my story? I really just want to start with a great character. And I let the character kind of lead me to what his or her message is. And so it just kind of happens organically that way.
Riza, your art brings settings to life and is full of details that transport readers to new places. On your blog, you say that it's actually remarkably easy to lose yourself in your art if you allow your mind to let go. How do you suspend reality to create these magical places in your illustrations?
I found recently, if you put on brown noise or pink noise, it kind of transports your brain into a different place and just kind of cuts out all of the noise inside of your head. And maybe like if you're working in a space that's not so like quiet, it really helps me get in the zone. It's the same thing as white noise, but it eliminates certain higher frequencies. So it's kind of like the sound that you get of like rain against a window, or like the ocean crashing.
So you're really bringing sound into your environment when you're drawing and creating a physical environment for your characters.
Yeah, no, totally. I find in the beginning when I can be a little bit more loose, I can have music on, just to dilly dally and just something different to listen to. But when I get towards the end of a project and I need to concentrate, I find that pink noise and brown noise really help me.
So Kelly, the story of Oona carries so many messages that children enjoy as they really see themselves in this curious, mischievous character. How did you decide what personality Oona would have?
When I first saw the illustration that Riza had created of this adorable mermaid, of course, I was captivated by her. And as often happens, I just kind of really just stare at the character and really wait for the character to talk to me. When I was thinking about creating Oona, her personality, that line, she was sweet and a little bit salty like the ocean where she lived, just kind of came to me. And so I wanted to create a character who is not like so perfect all the time. And sometimes Oona gets frustrated. Sometimes she has some self-doubt. Sometimes she even gets angry. And I think that makes her relatable for kids. So I think, anytime I'm beginning to create any kind of new character, you really want to have that balance and to create a character that kids can see themselves in and identify with.
Love that line. Sweet and a little bit salty, like the ocean where she lived. Beautiful. So help me understand that process then. You had actually seen Riza's illustration. You saw the character first before you fully fleshed out the personality?
Yeah, this book actually began with Riza's art. She created this wonderful mermaid, and they were looking for a story for her. And so I was given some art samples from Riza, and I just kind of put myself in that world. And again, just really waited for Oona to talk to me and tell me what her story was and what she wanted me to know about her. But yeah, and sometimes it happens that way where the art does come first. It's not typical. Sometimes, usually the story comes first, and then the art follows. But in this case, yeah, the illustrations were the starting point for the character Oona.
I love hearing that. We often tell students that start with their artwork. They should draw a piece of art, and then the story will be inspired by the characters and the scenes I drew. So I love that we've got a real life example here where you as the author were inspired by Riza's work. That's beautiful. So Riza, how did you get this vision for Una? Was she looking just like this the first time you envisioned her? Or did you have several earlier versions of Una that look different from what we see right now?
Una, I wish I could show you a picture of her, of how she started, because she looked pretty different. I was inspired by just a different kind of tail, like the lionfish tail. It was the earliest version. It's like this little girl with like a little jellyfish on her head with a lionfish tail. And then it evolved to this girl getting caught in a net, like a mermaid getting caught in a net, and her hair was like piled up really, really big. And my agent had actually said that she wasn't a fan of the hair. So when I was drawing a mermaid next, I was like, oh, what if I just change that into an afro? And that's how Una with the afro kind of came to be. But she still had a green tail. And then I think for, there's this drawing challenge on Instagram called Mermaid, where you draw a mermaid for every day of May. So I was participating in that event, and I decided to put the lionfish tail on Una, and that just that was the image that stuck.
Great hearing how she evolved from your first ideas to where she is now. Is she the first mermaid of color in a children's book?
I don't ever remember seeing one, and a lot of people have actually commented to me like, my kid loves mermaids, but she can't find a mermaid that looks like her, so thank you for doing Una. So that's always really touching to hear.
Absolutely. Thank you for making Una. And that's a great opportunity now for us to hear the story and see Una in the book.
Una. Una was sweet and a little bit salty, like the ocean where she lived. She was also brave and curious, like most treasure hunters. When Una was just a baby, no bigger than a scallop, she chased a pearl into the mouth of a whale. Lucky for her, she popped right back out. As the years passed, Una found bigger treasure and even bigger trouble. It's a good thing she has Otto. Una rescued Otto from an oyster net when he was just a pup. She taught him tricks like sit, roll over, walrus, and her favorite, pufferfish. Una and Otto searched for treasure nearly every day. They uncovered keys and coins and buttons and bottles. Sometimes they even found lost gold, and sometimes lost glasses. But there was one special treasure Una could never quite reach: the crown. It was extra sparkly in a way that made Una's heart thump. But the crown was stuck deep in the rift, and not a pole or a pail or the sticky stick of a snail could get it unstuck. Still, Una was determined. Her next plan was a good one. She'd knock the crown loose. Unfortunately, the current shifted, the lobster crate and rock drifted, and the squid, well, see for yourself. It's hard to say who was more surprised when the water cleared, Una or the shark. Her third plan most definitely would have worked if the crabs hadn't been so crabby and the waves hadn't been so wavy, and if that long ship plank hadn't bumped her on the head hard before the greedy rift gobbled it up too. Poor Una. This was getting personal. She shouted into the pit, "You can keep your dumb crown, I quit." Generally speaking, mermaids are not quitters, but at this point, one could hardly blame her. Instead of looking for treasure with Otto, Una napped on the rocks with the sea lions. She drew pictures in the sand with the starfish. And she read from her favorite glass bottles with her land friends. All of this would have been perfectly fine, except Una wasn't perfectly fine. Clearly, she was missing her spark. And a mermaid without her spark is like a seagull without an appetite. Unnatural. They like to eat, don't they? A seashell washed ashore. Una studied it thoughtfully. It gave her an idea. She got right to work. The next day, Una peered nervously into the rift. Why did it look so much deeper and scarier than she remembered? Otto pretended to be a narwhal, making Una laugh. Admittedly, the new treasure hunting goggles she'd invented were funny looking, but they were also her best shot at reaching the crown. She dove to the bottom of the murky rift. That's when Una noticed something she couldn't see from above. A bridge. A bridge made from a crate, a rock, and the very same plank that plunked her on the head. And it led straight to the crown. But what was that rumbling sound? It grew louder and louder. The ocean floor shook and the water around Una churned into a thick stew of sand and sea creatures. She couldn't see. She felt trapped. Would the hungry rift gobble her up too? Through the commotion, Una heard something in the distance. It was faint, but comforting and familiar. The whales. Una sang along until the rumbling stopped and the water cleared. Finally, this was her chance. Una held her breath. Ready, steady, aim. Clink! Hooray! She got it! We did it, Una cheered, placing the crown on her best friend. It really is beautiful, she gushed. But these, Una said excitedly, holding up her new goggles, these are spectacular. Otto agreed, because sometimes the best treasure in the world isn't found. It's made. And there she is with her friend Otto and her new goggles and, of course, the sparkly crown. The end.
Kelly, your story is so playful and yet purposeful. She's so determined. The feelings of fear and frustration are balanced with determination and pride and joy. The story talks about messy trouble and missing her spark. Why did you bring in so many emotions into the story? And what are the benefits of all kids getting into some messy trouble?
Characters in books can provide great role models for kids in terms of how to find new coping skills, right? When they see a character in a book get into messy trouble, like Una did, and they see what's working for her and maybe what's not working for her, and they can also see, yeah, she's getting frustrated and she really wants to give up, but she doesn't give up, right? She sticks with it. Anytime I write a story, of course, plot is important to any book, but it really is the emotions that are connected to that plot that I think readers identify with and connect with, and that's what draws them into the story. So when I was creating this moment for Una, when she was really trying to get that crown that she really, really wanted, or that's what she thought she really wanted, right? I was trying to build on that emotion, all those different things that kids might feel, that frustration, the anger, the desperation, the hopelessness, right? But then we come full circle at the end and we celebrate her success because she was determined and she didn't give up. And I just think that's a message that kids need to hear, because life can get frustrating. We all get frustrated. So when they can see characters in books who have those same frustrations and they overcome, it's inspiring.
And Riza, your art really does capture all those emotions. You show us when Una is missing her spark and when she's really determined, and all of those emotions that the story takes her through. Please show us some of your art techniques that help express emotions. Using some art supplies that kids might have at home, show how to draw a mermaid that's moving, maybe her puppy friend, and show some of the emotions that they feel.
So Una, she's got very, I guess, like childlike proportions, and her hair takes up, I think, half the length of her body. I really like the poofy kind of airy quality. So whenever I sketch her, I just kind of leave her hair I leave it open. I might do this just to show that it's dark, but she has bangs. And she often has like seaweed or pearls. I've done starfish, clams, just random things in her hair. It stems from I had an afro before I shaved my head or cut my hair. And I'd always, not always, but I sometimes found like twigs or just random leaves. Like, how did that get there? So it's something Una and I share.
She would collect all kinds of beautiful things swimming through the ocean.
Yeah. It's like, who needs a bag when you have hair like that? Maybe she's holding something. I believe this is like I'll come back to that later. And she has a shirt that's got like these flowy shell-shaped things at the end. And her stripes, some are colored in just like the pure color, and then in the in-between parts, she has those stripes. Yeah. A lot of my characters, they just have like little dots for eyes. And so to show them kind of emote, I rely more on body language, because you can't mistake. I don't know, if someone's happy, they can have their arms up or their legs out. I don't know, it breaks up their silhouette. So you can tell we're really good at reading body language.
I love the way you say that it all comes together when you ask yourself questions. It's a great tip for young artists. So
yeah.
you don't have it all figured out when you start. You just keep asking yourself good questions.
Yeah, that's a lot of problem solving. I could spend a whole day just kind of playing around with marks and what happens if you do this? I'm gonna try using these, they're washable markers. I can go over this with like a crayon or a darker marker and fill in her hair, because it's a pretty solid black. It all becomes part of the finish and gives it its personality, which is why I think art, it really is like an expression of who you are. Because even my feelings, if I'm not digging a piece, I might put down something like in a hurry, kind of like this, just blah. but then I'll talk myself back into painting something and go at it a lot more gently. And if I'm listening to some fast-paced music, I might be like putting down marks with the beat of the music. Her tail is like this mostly orange, and then it has those like dark reddish bands. They're very vibrant, very gorgeous. Growing up, I don't remember seeing a lot of stories that had girls that looked like me. Humans, I think we just like to see ourselves in characters. Just it gives us something to connect to. And I feel like, at least in the last couple of years, I've seen a lot more inclusions of stories that are of characters from all different backgrounds. And it just gives you an in-depth look into different walks of life that I think make America just a really cool place. We have so many different cultures and people that we really should take all the opportunities we can to showcase that. She just has like these little dots, and I'm using this Crayola Take Note. These gel pens. But lionfish have these like, they're the most elaborate fish I've ever seen. All these like frills and stripes. They just look really cool. So I'm going to start with the watercolor pencils to sketch out Otto. And I'm also using watercolor paper. I've drawn him a lot, but he can be a little tricky because he's got these little like stumpy arms. And I'm going to show him kind of doing like a happy dance maybe.
I love how you're forming him with some basic shapes. It's
Yeah.
really great to see how those lines and shapes come together and get a personality.
Definitely. You always want to break something down into simple shapes because it's just easier for you to wrap your mind around. And also if you need to do it from a challenging angle, it's a lot easier. And I just switched colors because I found out through earlier experimentation, this makes like a really pretty kind of golden brown.
You add the
So
water when
yeah,
you
once you add water, I actually have a toothbrush with me just in case. You don't even need a paintbrush. You could use a toothbrush.
or sometimes you can just go in there with the fingertip with just a little dab of water.
Yeah.
Those watercolor pencils to a nice combination.
Definitely. I'm all about using, if you can use your hands, I'd say go for it. So here's my toothbrush. I'm gonna dip in some water.
Everybody has some old toothbrushes they don't use anymore sitting in the bathroom under the sink, right?
Yeah, definitely. And like I went like outside the line. That's okay. You can tell this is all very experimental most of the time. I don't know necessarily what's gonna happen when I put something down. But part of the fun is it's kind of trial and error. Like you make a mark, do you like it? Cool, keep going. If not, find a way to fix it, or I wouldn't say move on, because finishing something, even if it's not going the way you want it to go, can be really helpful just to fill up your memory bank for next time. Like, oh, now I know. And now I'm using this Crayola color stick just to kind of fill it in. Right now it's all, like, I think you could use as many colors as you want, because brown is just an amalgamation of a lot of colors. So however you get there, it will work.
Adding the layers on with the different medium really adds a beautiful texture to it.
Yeah, and it's way more fun.
One of the things I love about your illustrations is the detail and the humor you bring in. I got such a kick out of looking at the back of the cover for Una,
Mhm.
and how you have so much humor in, the flower pot that looked like a person. You see the eyes on it, and then there's a spoon that looks like it's performing or singing in the hanging pot, and then that adorable um, container. It looks like they're clay flower pots kind of put together as a creature. Talk about how you bring humor
Yeah.
into your work.
Well, in my head, was kind of, she invents things, but she also kind of just salvages them. I don't know if you've seen those gardens that use like recycled materials to make kind of crazy sculptures and things of that sort. So I was inspired by that idea. So I was just, oh, what would she was making this little, like the little clay pot animal that kind of, to me, it was kind of looking like a seahorse. Like, oh, she'd put eyes and it would have a mane. Just but using like the kind of surroundings, her surroundings. Like, so she'd have pieces of coral and just random things she'd find on the ocean floor.
And
So
recycled art is such an exciting thing for kids, right? Once they figured out what's okay to use and safe to use, they can come together in so many fun combinations. So I want to remind the audience that while you're seeing Riza do her wonderful illustration, it's time for you to be drawing too. So be sure you've got your, grab some of your colored pencils, paint, markers, paper. Think about what brings you joy, what frustrates you. Decide on a character. You might choose to do Otto or Una or any character you want to bring to your art. Pick a setting, could be underwater, on land, in the sky. And most important, how is your art going to tell an adventure story and tell us about your character? And a special message for parents and teachers. While Rise and kids of all ages are busy drawing, I want to mention that you can sign up to receive a free monthly newsletter with resources that make learning colorful and fun. So, Riza, while you're finishing up your work, I just want to ask you a little bit about your creative process. Your blog says that sometimes you don't follow your own advice and you'll start painting without a plan. So, tell us a bit about where your inspiration comes from and what does it mean to have a plan versus letting the act of painting surprise you?
I know you're kind of supposed to sketch out your drawing first, and once you get the sketch, you kind of revise it. And for me, like the spontaneous nature of just picking up a tool and going for it, which I often do, and I find that the result, like you don't know what you're gonna get, but I just find it the most rewarding when I don't know what I'm gonna start with, and I end up with a painting. To me, I kind of amaze myself, like how did I do that? It's creating something out of nothing is rewarding. I feel like all art is like that because it's what you're doing. There's nothing but a blank piece of paper, and as soon as you start putting marks down, it's turning into something. So you kind of just have to have the patience to let it evolve, and don't be afraid to try new things, new techniques, new tools that you've never used before, because experimentation is a lot of fun.
We're getting a real sense of where Otto is. It reminds me of one of my favorite lines in the Una book. Kelly, how does the line go? Sometimes the best treasure in the world isn't found, it's made. And here we have a treasure that Rise is making for us right before our eyes.
That's right.
Well, Rise is finishing up. I would like to hear just some tips that each of you have. Riza, would you like to share?
If drawing interests you and painting interests you, just paint. Try to paint and draw every day, because it's a skill like anything. The more you do it, definitely it just becomes a lot more freeing, because you're not really worried about technical skills per se. You can really just focus on creating characters that you come up with, and you can have them in the setting that you want, and you can pose their bodies like however whatever way you want, just figuring out what do you like to draw.
Finding out what you're interested in and just keep practicing it and refining it. It's great.
And the way I write stories is very similar to the way Riza is inspired by the pictures that she draws. A lot of times I just start with things that I love, things that bring me joy. Story ideas really are everywhere. So I'm always keeping my eyes and ears open for ideas and inspiration. So kids out there, if you feel like you're stuck and you don't know what to draw or you don't know what to write about, I would just say, what do you love? Because that's where your treasure is. That's where you will find your best inspiration. Maybe it's dogs, or maybe it's space, or maybe it's horses. Whatever it is that you love, you can find a way to turn it into a story and create the illustrations and make your own picture book.
Oh, look. In just those few seconds that we were away, Otto got more seaweed. Absolutely love it. Reza, tell us a bit about that contrast, that horizon line. How can we help kids understand, where Otto is, what's behind him and what's in front of him?
Keeping things that are closer to you darker, and things that are further away lighter, because it's what happens in real life too. The atmosphere kind of takes over, everything gets kind of blue. And here I would say this is a very just kind of straight on perspective. So, and there's a lot of water, so if I was going to put anything like fish, you can add bubbles. You kind of want to give it a bluish tint too if they're further away.
We want to thank Kelly and Riza for inspiring us today. And we also want to thank our friends at Harper Kids for publishing their great books. And we want to share a special thank you for all of the families and teachers and students who have joined us today.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun exploring Oona and Otto a little bit more, using all these fun products. And have a great day creating.
Bye-bye.